absolutely pains me. I wasn't going to say this, but I'm going to say this to start with. I'm a Christian, as I've said many times. I pray for the country, I pray for the government. I also pray for the current administration as well, and it's not for me as a foreigner to talk about politics. But I want to go back to what happened in early March when President Rodrigo Roa Duterte was forcefully brought to The Hague. I don't normally speak like this, but I feel I must. Apparently, there was no cooperation. President Bongbong Marcos said that he wasn't going to cooperate with the ICC. I remember hearing a while ago that apparently they don't monitor who's going through the immigration. I think somebody in the Senate hearing was saying they don't really pay attention if anyone's going to be there, meaning to say they don't monitor if the ICC or anyone, they don't monitor if anyone's going to come to the Philippines. Each time I go to the Philippines, I fill out an etravelgov.ph, and that means I have to put my details, I have to put my occupation. There's only one of two ways to go through. You either go through that way, or you do go through the diplomatic channel. Meaning to say the government, meaning to say immigration services know exactly who's coming into the country. They know exactly who's going into the Philippines. Cooperation, if it was forced, let's go to this Interpol red notice. If the Philippine government was forced to hand over President Duterte in some kind of, agreement, then I would reluctantly say that that's the law. But apparently it was a diffusion notice, meaning to say that the government didn't have to cooperate. It should go through the Philippine justice system. Let's just park that for a second, and let's talk about the passing of Pope Francis, God rest his soul. People have been talking about President Bongbong Marcos and the First Lady going to the Rome, to the Vatican. I agree. President Bongbong Marcos is the head of state. He's the head of state of the country. And considering the Philippines is a majority Catholic country, I think it's only right that the highest official in the land goes to the Vatican for that funeral. I have no issue with that. What I found distasteful, and I have to be careful saying this, is as far as I understand, the very same presidential plane that Bongbong Marcos travelled on was the same plane that was used to forcefully send President Rodrigo Roa Duterte to The Hague. I was watching the plane as it was going along, and I dared not think whether President Bongbong Marcos was sitting on that very same chair that wasn't even cold from when President Duterte was on that chair, and that really, really upsets me, There is a difference between handing over and cooperation or handing him over on a silver platter, and I have to say, and I'm sorry to say this, if you're going to arrest somebody, you need 5 police officers, 10 police officers, but to send 3,000 or 4,000 police officers, don't tell me that's not cooperation, because it is cooperation. Somebody gave the order to those 4,000 or 5,000 police officers to arrest former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Now, as far as I understand, a diffusion notice means that you go on a surrender basis. President Rodrigo Roa Duterte didn't surrender. If he'd surrendered, he would have gone voluntarily. But when I was listening to the Senate, apparently the police were saying, we were saying you could go the easy way or the hard way. This means if he doesn't go the easy way, if he doesn't voluntarily walk onto the plane, he gets forced to go. When Attorney Salvador Medjadil was handcuffed, he was handcuffed because he was stopping this process from happening. And then Attorney Salvador Medjadil is here in The Hague. I don't know what he had, some kind of heart episode, I'm not sure. But that was so stressful for him. And look at how he is now. Look at what happened. Look at what happened under that fateful day.